My worst year was back in 2009. And today I want to take a look back at that year and tell you why it was so bad for me. It wasn't just the financial crisis that happened back then. There were a lot of other external forces that I had to deal with. There were also mistakes that I made. And when I tell you what those mistakes were, well, you might end up thinking what an idiot I was for making those mistakes. I haven't made those mistakes since then, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in this video. So 2009 was an extremely rough year for me, but I was able to get through it, and now I'm in much better shape financially and emotionally. But before going into any details, if you like this video, give it the old thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And remember that bell notification. Okay, 2009. Once I tell you my story, let me know in the comments if you've ever had a year that rivals what I went through. So before I can get started on everything that transpired in 2009, I need to tell you about some life events leading up to that year. In September of 2005, I traveled to Davao City to meet a Filipina that I had met online. Now, that didn't work out, but when I was there, I met who would become my future wife. I brought her to the U.S. and we got married in April of 2007. She turned out to be very narcissistic. And narcissistic is actually an understatement because she did everything that she could to torment me as much as possible. I knew going into the marriage that she had some emotional baggage, but I just didn't know the extent of just how messed up she really was. What I found out after we got married was that her stepfather had done incest to her from the time that she was only 8 years old. And with me being 15 years older than her, she looked at me like I was a father figure and a husband rolled into one. And since that was how she viewed me, she felt like she needed to get even with me for the things that her stepfather had done to her. Of course, I never did anything. She was very childlike, very insecure, and I thought just being a good, generous, loving, and patient husband would help her emotionally. In other words, she would feel loved. But it didn't help. She caused a severe strain on my finances by not caring that she ran up about a $30,000 credit card debt. She always had to have the latest cell phone, so 8 times I replaced her cell phone before the contracts had ended. This was just one of a multitude of mistakes that I made. And speaking of cell phone contracts, I had told her that we only had a limited amount of text messages in our plan, and I asked her not to exceed that amount. She ignored that request, and I received a cell phone bill for over $800, which of course I had to pay. I really didn't want to file bankruptcy, and at this point, I really didn't need to because I was employed with the best paying job that I'd ever had. I was a courier for DHL and the Teamsters Union, so I was able to make all of the payments on time. My wife did her job too by keeping all of the credit cards maxed out. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week while she spent my money in the mall. On top of that, I had been sending $300 a month to her mother in Davao City. And again, I was able to keep up with the minimum credit card payments, my mortgage, and the $300 monthly allowance for her mother. That was about to change, and bankruptcy became an option that I had to consider. It was in October of 2008 that I got laid off from DHL. Now we're getting close to the year 2009. In December of 2008, I found a job, but my monthly income had dropped to almost half of what I was earning at DHL. I crunched the numbers and determined that I was going to be $500 a month short. My new job started at 7 p.m., and I would work until about 3 in the morning. I ended up having to do some contract work during the day, using my car to make deliveries just to make ends meet. This meant getting only 3 hours of sleep a night and only showering once a week because sleep was more important. Which brings me into the year 2009. So now we have arrived into the first few months of 2009. And I need to point out that the events leading up to this point were nothing compared to what I'd be faced with in 2009. Here we go. I was continuing with my crazy work schedule. It was in February of 2009 that my wife wanted to travel from Seattle to Chicago to visit her sister. My wife's sister paid for the airfare because I didn't have the money. Once my wife was out in Chicago, she called me because she wanted to stay and work for her sister for about 4 months as a caregiver. I agreed to that because of how badly we needed the money. I thought to myself, this is a reprieve, finally some good news. But it wasn't good news. My wife's sister had been giving her free rent, so she didn't have much in the way of expenses. So then I asked my wife how much she was earning. My wife told me that it was none of my business. Let that sink in. Your wife tells you that her income is none of your business. On top of that, how much did she send me? Nothing. More than likely, the money that she made stayed in the state of Illinois and probably went and got spent at the local malls. By this point in our marriage, we had fought over money dozens of times. I continued with the crazy work schedule, only getting 3 hours of sleep a night. And then it was in March of 2009 that a friend who claimed to be going through some tough times himself asked me for a loan. I was able to get the money together through a payday loan through my credit union, so the interest rate was lower, plus I had more time to pay it off. And so I went ahead and loaned him the money. He promised to pay it back in a few months. It took him 5 years to pay it back, but in that 5 years, he spent $100 a month on cable TV. He bought his kids a PlayStation. He took his family on trips. All of these things were for items, services, and trips that were frivolous spending, not necessities. More arguments over money, but this time it wasn't with my wife. These arguments were with my friend. So now I was stuck with the payments. Big mistake on my part. After loaning him some money, then a few months later, probably May of 2009, he ran into more financial difficulties. Then came the bigger mistake. He needed a car. His credit score was shot. So I met him at a used car dealership to co-sign. But this big mistake turned into an even bigger mistake. The salesman convinced me that we should put the loan and the car in my name so that my friend could get a better interest rate. He fell behind on the payments, so I had to make the payments for him. But the story doesn't end there. He acquired parking tickets, red light violations, and toll violations, which he didn't pay. This became a civil matter, and of course, the collections came to me. More frivolous spending on his part, more arguments. He kept making the point that he needed to do fun things for his wife and 2 kids because his family comes first. It was sometime in mid-2009 that I just couldn't keep up with the crazy schedule. I quit the daytime delivery thing using my car, and I just finally said, screw it. If I'm late on some payments, then that's just the way it is. So now let's talk about my wife. Now she's my ex-wife. But if you remember, I told you that she went out to work for her sister in Chicago for 4 months. She came back to Seattle after the 4 months, but was only with me for a week. Then she left again for Chicago for another 4 months. And this was a pattern that went on until 2011. Come and see me for a week, gone for 4 months. Come and see me for a week, gone for 4 months. Her being gone most of the time was the main reason why I divorced her. Her narcissistic behavior also contributed to the divorce, as well as her temper. Luckily, we never had any kids. She had a medical condition, so she was not able to get pregnant. By the time that I decided to file for divorce because of the financial crisis, I owed $80,000 more on my condo than what it was worth. I handled the divorce myself, with the exception that I did have a lawyer draft up a letter explaining to her that if she gave me a quitclaim deed on my condo, then she wouldn't be responsible for half of the $80,000. So once I got all of the divorce paperwork together, I had her served. She signed all of the documents, including the quitclaim deed, but she didn't have the quitclaim deed notarized, and I had to pay $50 to a title company for the deed. And since the document had been already signed, a new one was needed. So I went back to the title company, paid another $50, sent her the new quitclaim deed. Months went by, and I never got the new and notarized quitclaim deed. So I called her saying, "When am I going to get that document?" She lost it. Yeah. So I went back to the title company 3 more times. $250 in document fees that should have only been $50. She was playing a childish game. I finally just went ahead and filed. Then I called her and I said, "Okay, so here is what's going to happen. The condo is going to sell for $80,000 less than what it's worth. And the way the law works, you're going to owe half of that $80,000. The judge is going to order that it be sold. But if you send me that quitclaim deed notarized, then you won't owe anything." Then she started pleading with me to send her another one. At this point, I just blew up. "What happened to the last one that I sent you?" Oh, she had lost that one too. At least that's what she told me. I said, "No, you didn't lose it. You threw it away, just like you threw away all the other ones." Then she kind of admitted that she was playing another silly game with me. So I sent her a 6th quitclaim deed. Now we're into it for $300. And I got this one with the notary within a week. On July 6, 2011, my nightmarish marriage finally became final. One more thing about 2009, and this was the worst part of that year. It involved my mother. My parents had divorced in 1975, and my mom remarried to a man that myself and my 2 siblings really didn't like much. He didn't like us much either, but we tolerated each other. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and we noticed that our mom started forgetting things. I think that you know where I'm going with this. Alzheimer's and dementia. By 2009, her health had deteriorated so badly that she didn't always recognize us. She ended up passing away in August of 2009. My mom was the most wonderful and sweetest angel ever, in my opinion. With everything that went on in 2009, the financial strain, working 16-hour days, and then losing my mother, it was the toughest year ever for me. Then she married that guy. She had a net worth of over $1 million, and he had nothing. She didn't ask for a prenup. We never initiated any conversations with her about a will because we didn't want to appear money-grubbing. And in the last few years of her life, she no longer had the mental capacity to make any decisions regarding a last will and testament. That's where probate entered the picture. The man who she married took control of the finances. Then he ghosted us. I learned later that he remarried and has passed away. He, of course, left us nothing. And this is not what our beloved mother would have wanted. So looking back on 2009, there were a lot of lessons that I learned, and I'm thankful that things are much better for me now. So that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for making it this far. God bless, peace out, and I'll catch you in the next video.